Here's a dark, realistic motivational speech intro in that chaotic mastermind style, without mentioning the character and without an ending sentence. For the dark truth about human behavior that explains almost everything. Most people spend their entire lives trying to understand why people change, betray, ignore, admire, or suddenly disappear. They search for complicated answers, but the truth is far simpler and far darker. Human behavior isn't driven by what people say. It's driven by what they want, what they fear, and what they believe will benefit them. Words create illusions. Actions reveal motives. The uncomfortable reality is that loyalty is often tested by opportunity. Respect is often measured by value. Attention is often given to power. And many of the behaviors that confuse people every day are not random at all. They follow predictable patterns hidden beneath emotions, social masks, and polite conversations. People want to believe that everyone thinks logically, acts fairly, and values honesty above everything else. But when pressure appears, when status is involved, when desire collides with principle, a completely different side of human nature begins to emerge. The moment you stop listening to what people promise and start observing what they consistently do, the world starts making a lot more sense. Most people believe they know the people around them. They think years of friendship, family ties, loyalty, or shared experiences are enough to reveal someone's true character. But the truth is far less comforting. People are easy to understand when life is comfortable. They are predictable when everything is going according to plan. Anyone can appear kind when there is nothing to lose. Anyone can appear loyal when loyalty costs nothing. Anyone can appear brave when fear is absent. Pressure changes everything. Pressure strips away the carefully crafted image people spend years building. It removes the filters, the social performances, and the polished version of themselves they want the world to see. When pressure arrives, human beings stop focusing on appearance and start focusing on survival. That is when reality becomes visible. A person may talk endlessly about honesty, but what happens when telling the truth threatens their reputation? A person may preach loyalty, but what happens when betrayal offers a reward? A person may claim courage, but what happens when fear stands directly in front of them? The answers to these questions reveal far more than years of conversation ever could. People often misunderstand human behavior because they judge others during peaceful moments. Calm waters hide weaknesses. Success hides insecurities. Comfort hides fear. But pressure exposes everything. Think about how quickly someone's personality can change when they feel threatened. The calm individual becomes aggressive. The confident individual becomes uncertain. The generous individual becomes selfish. The trustworthy individual begins making excuses. These changes are not random transformations. They are revelations. Pressure is not creating a new person. It is exposing the person who was already there. This is why difficult situations reveal truths that ordinary days cannot. When resources become limited, competition increases. When status is challenged, egos emerge. When uncertainty appears, hidden fears rise to the surface. Human beings instinctively protect what they value most, and the choices they make during these moments expose their real priorities. Many people spend years believing they are surrounded by genuine support, only to discover otherwise when life becomes difficult. During success, Everyone wants a seat at the table. During struggle, the room becomes empty. Suddenly, people become busy. Messages go unanswered. Promises disappear. Excuses multiply. Nothing magical happened. Pressure simply forced people to reveal where their interests truly existed. The same principle applies to every level of society. Businesses, friendships, relationships, communities, and even entire nations often display admirable values when conditions are stable. Yet when pressure intensifies, behavior changes dramatically. Principles that once seemed unbreakable become negotiable. Values that appeared permanent become flexible. The masks begin to crack. What makes this truth uncomfortable is that it applies to everyone. No one is completely immune. Every individual has a version of themselves that only appears under enough pressure. Some discover strength they never knew they possessed. Others discover weaknesses they spent years denying. Some become more compassionate. Others become ruthless. The pressure itself is not the deciding factor. The person beneath the surface is. People often ask why someone suddenly changed after a crisis, a conflict, or a major challenge. In many cases, the person did not change at all. The circumstances changed. The environment changed. The pressure increased. What everyone witnessed was not a transformation, but an exposure. That is why observing people during difficult moments provides insights that years of ordinary interaction cannot. When consequences become real, priorities become visible. When comfort disappears, character becomes measurable. When fear enters the room, authenticity follows closely behind. Pressure has a way of forcing honesty out of people, even when they desperately want to maintain the illusion. People like to believe that most decisions are guided by principles, fairness, and morality. It is a comforting idea. It creates the illusion that the world operates according to noble values, and that human beings consistently choose what is right over what is beneficial. But when you observe behavior closely enough, a different pattern begins to emerge. Self-interest is one of the most powerful forces driving human behavior. This does not mean that every person is selfish in the cruel or malicious sense. It means that people naturally evaluate situations through the lens of their own needs, desires, fears, goals, and advantages. Before deciding what is fair, many first consider what is useful. Before deciding what is right, many first consider what affects them personally. Most people are unaware of how strongly self-interest influences their thinking. They convince themselves that their decisions are based entirely on logic or morality, while quietly protecting their own position at the same time. The human mind is remarkably skilled at creating justifications for choices that serve personal interests. Watch how opinions change when circumstances change. A person may support a rule until that rule limits their freedom. They may defend a principle until following it becomes costly. They may criticize a behavior until they find themselves benefiting from the same behavior. Suddenly, exceptions appear. New explanations emerge. Standards become flexible. The principle did not change. The benefit changed. This is why people often appear inconsistent. Their words may remain the same, but their actions shift according to what serves them in the moment. They are not always lying intentionally. In many cases, they genuinely believe their reasoning is objective. The influence of self-interest often operates beneath conscious awareness. Consider how relationships function. People naturally gravitate toward individuals who make them feel valued, respected, entertained, understood, or supported. Even acts of kindness often contain an element of personal reward. Helping others can provide satisfaction, social approval, emotional fulfillment, or a sense of purpose. Human behavior is rarely driven by a single motive. Multiple motivations exist at the same time, and self-interest is usually one of them. This reality becomes even more visible during conflict. When disagreements occur, people often claim they are defending truth, justice, or fairness. Yet, if you examine the situation carefully, many are also defending pride, status, reputation, comfort, or control. The argument presented on the surface is not always the real battle taking place underneath. Human beings are experts at protecting their self-image. Few people want to see themselves as selfish. As a result, self-interest often disguises itself as virtue. It wears the clothing of noble intentions while quietly pursuing personal advantage. Power reveals this dynamic with remarkable clarity. When people gain influence, authority, or status, their decisions often reveal priorities that were hidden before. Opportunities that once seemed unethical suddenly become acceptable. Rules that once seemed important become obstacles. The ability to benefit personally creates temptations that expose underlying motivations. This does not mean morality is fake or meaningless. Genuine integrity exists. Genuine sacrifice exists. Genuine compassion exists. But these qualities become valuable precisely because they are difficult. Choosing what is right when it conflicts with self-interest requires strength. Choosing fairness when unfairness offers greater rewards requires discipline. Choosing principle over personal gain requires character. That is why actions carry more weight than declarations. Anyone can claim they value honesty when honesty costs nothing. Anyone can speak about loyalty when loyalty requires no sacrifice. Anyone can praise integrity while standing far away from temptation. The true test arrives when personal benefit and personal values move in opposite directions. In those moments, human behavior becomes easier to understand. The choices people make often reveal what they value most, not what they talk about most. Their priorities become visible. Their motivations become clearer. Their hidden calculations begin to surface. The gap between public image and private desire starts to shrink. Behind countless decisions, arguments, alliances, betrayals, and sudden changes of behavior lies a simple force that rarely announces itself openly, but quietly influences nearly everything people do. One of the biggest mistakes people make is believing words more than actions. They listen carefully to promises, explanations, compliments, and declarations, assuming that language provides a clear window into someone's character. But words are often the easiest thing a person can control. They can be rehearsed, adjusted, polished, and strategically delivered. Actions are far more difficult to manipulate consistently. Human beings wear masks, not physical masks, but social ones. Every day, people present versions of themselves designed for specific audiences. They adjust their personality at work, around friends, in relationships, and in public spaces. They highlight certain qualities while hiding others. They emphasize strengths and minimize flaws. This behavior is so common that most people no longer notice they are doing it. Words are one of the primary tools used to create these masks. A person who wants to appear trustworthy talks about honesty. A person who wants to appear compassionate speaks about kindness. A person who wants to appear confident uses language that projects certainty. None of these things automatically prove anything. They simply create an image. The dangerous part is that people often confuse the image with reality. Someone can talk about loyalty for years and still betray others when circumstances change. Someone can speak passionately about respect while secretly treating people as tools. Someone can constantly discuss integrity while making dishonest decisions behind closed doors. The words create a story. The actions reveal the truth. This is why observing behavior is more valuable than analyzing speeches. When people tell you who they are describing the person they want you to see. When people repeatedly act in a certain way, they are revealing the person they actually are. The difference between those two versions can sometimes be enormous. Most deception does not happen through direct lies. It happens through selective presentation. People share the information that benefits their image and hide the information that threatens it. They showcase virtues while concealing motives. They present conclusions without revealing intentions. The mask becomes stronger because others want to believe it. People are naturally attracted to stories that make sense. A confident explanation feels reassuring. A convincing promise creates hope. A flattering compliment creates trust. The mind often accepts words because words are easier to process than long-term patterns of behavior. Actions require patience. To understand someone accurately, you must watch what they do repeatedly over time. One action can be an accident. Two actions can be coincidence. Consistent behavior becomes evidence. Notice who supports others only when there is an audience watching. Notice who disappears when assistance becomes inconvenient. Notice who talks about fairness but changes standards when personal interests are involved. Notice who claims honesty but avoids accountability when mistakes are exposed. Patterns rarely lie. This does not mean people never change. Human beings are capable of growth, learning, and transformation. But even genuine change reveals itself through actions long before words become believable. Anyone can announce a new mindset. Proving it requires behavior. The reason actions reveal intentions so effectively is because actions involve consequences. Words can remain theoretical. Actions force choices. Every choice reflects priorities. A person may claim that family is their highest value, yet consistently prioritize status over relationships. A person may insist that trust matters deeply, yet repeatedly break commitments when convenience offers a shortcut. The spoken value and the actual value are not always the same. Pressure makes this gap even more obvious. When circumstances become difficult, maintaining a mask requires effort. Stress weakens performance. Fear disrupts image management. Urgency reduces calculation. The carefully crafted version of someone begins to crack, and authentic motivations become easier to see. That is why moments of conflict, disappointment, competition, and uncertainty often reveal more truth than years of comfortable interaction. During these moments, people stop focusing on what sounds right and start focusing on what feels necessary. The mask begins to slip. The person who claimed courage may retreat. The person who claimed loyalty may abandon others. The person who claimed integrity may compromise values. The person who claimed kindness may become indifferent. Words create expectations. Actions expose intentions. And when the two no longer match, the truth usually follows the actions. Few things reveal human nature faster than power. People often assume that relationships are built entirely on emotions, trust, affection, loyalty, or mutual respect. While these things certainly play a role, there is another force operating beneath the surface that many prefer not to acknowledge. Power influences how people see each other, how they behave toward each other, and how they define their place in the social world. The uncomfortable truth is that a shift in power can change relationships far more quickly than a shift in feelings. Think about how people behave around someone who suddenly becomes successful. The personality may remain exactly the same. The values may remain exactly the same. The character may remain exactly the same. Yet the treatment they receive often changes overnight. People who once ignored them become interested. People who once doubted them become supportive. People who once dismissed them suddenly pay attention. What changed? Not necessarily the person. The perception of their value changed. Human beings are highly sensitive to status, influence, and social positioning. Throughout history, survival often depended on understanding power structures. While society has evolved, many of these instincts remain deeply embedded within human behavior. People constantly evaluate who has influence, who has resources, who controls opportunities, and who possesses social leverage. These evaluations affect relationships in ways most people rarely admit. A friendship can feel stable until one person experiences extraordinary success. Suddenly, hidden insecurities emerge. Comparisons begin. Jealousy appears where support once existed. The relationship that seemed built entirely on connection starts reacting to differences in status. The emotions may not have disappeared, but power changed the environment in which those emotions existed. The same pattern appears in workplaces, families, social circles, and romantic relationships. When one person gains more influence, authority, recognition, or control, the dynamic often shifts. Expectations change, communication changes, behavior changes, power creates new incentives, and incentives reveal motivations. Many people believe they would treat others exactly the same, regardless of status or position. Reality often tells a different story. Observe how differently some individuals speak to a manager compared to a colleague. Observe how differently they treat someone famous compared to someone unknown. Observe how quickly respect appears when influence enters the room. What is fascinating is that power does not always need to be real. Sometimes the perception of power is enough. If people believe someone possesses influence, they often alter their behavior accordingly. They become more attentive, more agreeable, more forgiving, and more interested. Human beings respond not only to actual authority, but also to the possibility of future advantage. This is where relationships become complicated. Many connections that appear genuine are never tested by major changes in power. As long as both individuals remain in familiar positions, everything feels stable. But when one person rises dramatically or falls dramatically, hidden truths begin to surface. Some people celebrate your growth. Others tolerate it. Others quietly resent it. The difference becomes visible only after the balance changes. Power also affects the person who gains it. Many individuals believe they would remain unchanged if they acquired influence, authority, wealth, or status. Yet power often removes limitations that previously controlled behavior. Traits that were hidden by circumstance become visible once opportunity expands. A generous person may become more generous. An arrogant person may become more arrogant. A manipulative person may become more manipulative. Power does not always create character. Often it reveals character. Without power, many desires remain theoretical. With power, those desires gain the ability to act. The result is a clearer picture of who someone truly is. This is why dramatic changes in relationships often follow changes in power. The shift exposes expectations, insecurities, ambitions, and hidden priorities that were previously concealed beneath routine interactions. People begin reacting not only to each other as individuals, but also to the new positions they occupy. Respect, admiration, attraction, loyalty, and even conflict can transform rapidly when power enters the equation. The emotional connection may still exist, but the social reality surrounding that connection changes. Human beings respond to that reality whether they consciously recognize it or not. The moment influence changes hands, masks begin to move, priorities begin to rearrange themselves, and relationships start revealing dimensions that were invisible before. People like to think they are rational creatures. They imagine themselves making decisions through careful analysis, objective reasoning, and logical thought. They believe facts guide their choices, evidence shapes their opinions, and reason determines their actions. It is a comforting belief because it creates the impression of control, but beneath logic sits something much older. Fear. Fear is one of the most powerful forces influencing human behavior, and in countless situations, it outweighs logic completely. It operates quietly in the background, shaping decisions long before conscious reasoning has a chance to speak. Most people do not even recognize how often fear controls them. They tell themselves they are being practical when they are actually being afraid. They call it caution when it is avoidance. They call it realism when it is insecurity. They call it timing when it is hesitation. The mind is incredibly skilled at disguising fear as logic. A person may stay trapped in an unhappy situation because leaving feels uncertain. They explain their decision with reasonable arguments, listing risks and obstacles. On the surface, the explanation sounds logical. Beneath the explanation often lies a simple fear of the unknown. Another person may avoid pursuing a dream because failure would be painful. Instead of admitting fear, they construct detailed reasons why success is unlikely. The argument sounds intelligent. The fear remains hidden. This pattern appears everywhere. People remain silent because they fear rejection. People conform because they fear isolation. People obey because they fear consequences. People lie because they fear exposure. People attack because they fear weakness. People control others because they fear losing control of themselves. Fear influences behavior in ways that are often invisible to the people experiencing it. What makes fear so powerful is that it rarely announces itself directly. Instead, it changes perception. It alters the way people interpret situations. It magnifies threats and minimizes opportunities. It focuses attention on potential losses rather than potential gains. Logic asks what is true. Fear asks what could go wrong. And when fear becomes strong enough, the second question often drowns out the first. This is why intelligent people sometimes make irrational decisions. Intelligence does not eliminate fear. In many cases, intelligence simply provides better excuses for it. A clever mind can generate endless justifications to support a fearful choice. The person believes they are following logic. In reality, logic is serving fear. History is filled with examples of this dynamic. Groups of people have ignored facts because facts threaten their sense of security. Communities have resisted change because uncertainty felt dangerous. Individuals have chosen comfort over truth because truth required courage. The emotional brain often reacts faster than the logical brain. Before reason has time to evaluate a situation, fear has already begun preparing defenses. The body becomes tense, attention narrows, risks appear larger, possibilities appear smaller. At that moment, behavior starts changing. People become defensive when they feel their beliefs are threatened. People become aggressive when they feel vulnerable. People become controlling when they feel uncertain. People become dishonest when they fear consequences. The behavior may appear irrational from the outside, but from the perspective of fear, it often makes perfect sense. Fear is not always destructive. In many situations, it serves an important purpose. It protects people from genuine danger. It encourages preparation. It promotes survival. The problem arises when fear continues operating long after the actual threat has disappeared. Many people spend years reacting to fears that exist mostly in their imagination. Fear of failure prevents growth. Fear of judgment prevents authenticity. Fear of rejection prevents connection. Fear of loss prevents opportunity. Fear of uncertainty prevents change. The result is a life shaped less by possibility and more by avoidance. Perhaps the most fascinating aspect of fear is how effectively it influences entire groups. Fear spreads quickly. One anxious person affects another. One fearful narrative affects thousands. Once fear takes hold collectively, logic often struggles to compete. Facts become less persuasive. Evidence becomes less important. Emotion takes control. People begin making decisions based not on what is happening, but on what they fear might happen. The stronger the fear, the weaker logic often becomes. And when fear quietly takes control of perception, choices, relationships, ambitions, and beliefs, people can spend years believing they are following reason while unknowingly following something else entirely. One of the most misunderstood ideas in human behavior is respect. Many people spend years chasing approval, believing that if enough people like them, agree with them, praise them, or accept them, respect will naturally follow. They confuse popularity with respect. They confuse attention with respect. They confuse politeness with respect. The reality is far different. Approval is often given freely. Respect is earned. People may approve of someone because they are entertaining, agreeable, helpful, attractive, or easy to be around. Approval is emotional. It is temporary. It changes quickly. It depends heavily on circumstances, moods, and personal preferences. Respect operates according to different rules. Respect is connected to value. Not value in the sense of money or status alone, but value in the broader sense of character, competence, reliability, discipline, strength, and the ability to contribute something meaningful. Human beings instinctively recognize value, even when they refuse to admit it openly. This is why approval and respect do not always travel together. Someone can be widely liked, but not deeply respected. People may enjoy their company, laugh at their jokes, and appreciate their presence, yet still hesitate to trust their judgment or depend on them during difficult moments. At the same time, someone can be highly respected without being universally liked. Their standards may be demanding. Their honesty may be uncomfortable. Their decisions may disappoint people, yet others recognize their competence, consistency, and strength. Respect survives situations that approval cannot. The desire for approval often causes people to weaken their own position. They become excessively agreeable. They avoid difficult conversations. They hide their true opinions. They sacrifice boundaries to avoid conflict. They constantly adjust themselves to satisfy the expectations of others. For a short time, this behavior may increase approval. People appreciate convenience. People enjoy comfort. People prefer agreement over challenge. But something interesting happens beneath the surface. The more a person abandons their own standards to gain approval, the less respect they often receive. Human beings naturally observe consistency. They notice who stands by principles when pressure appears. They notice who keeps promises when keeping them becomes difficult. They notice who maintains self-respect even when facing criticism. These behaviors create value, and value creates respect. Many people assume respect comes from demanding it. They attempt to force it through authority, intimidation, status, or social influence. While these methods can create compliance, they rarely create genuine respect. People may obey power. People may fear consequences. People may remain silent. But respect cannot be forced. Authentic respect develops when actions repeatedly demonstrate qualities others admire, trust, or depend upon. Competence plays a major role. Individuals who consistently solve problems, master skills, and perform under pressure naturally gain respect. Human beings are drawn toward capability because capability creates confidence. When someone repeatedly proves they can handle challenges, people begin valuing their presence. Character matters just as much. A highly skilled person who lacks integrity may gain attention, but eventually loses trust. Respect requires more than ability. It requires reliability. It requires consistency between words and actions. It requires the willingness to uphold standards, even when doing so is inconvenient. This is where many people struggle. Seeking approval often feels easier than building value. Approval can be obtained through pleasing others. Value requires effort. Approval can appear instantly. Respect often takes years. Approval depends on how others feel about you. Respect depends on who you consistently prove yourself to be. The difference becomes especially visible during difficult times. When problems emerge, approval offers little protection. The people who once applauded may disappear. The opinions that once seemed important lose significance. Value remains. The individual who developed competence remains useful. The individual who developed discipline remains reliable. The individual who developed character remains trustworthy. That is why respect tends to endure longer than approval. It is built upon evidence rather than emotion. It grows from demonstrated qualities rather than temporary impressions. It survives disagreements because it is not dependent upon constant agreement. Human beings constantly evaluate value, whether consciously or unconsciously. They watch behavior. They observe consistency. They measure reliability. They notice strength under pressure and integrity under temptation. And while approval may fill a room quickly, respect usually follows those who bring something real, something proven, and something that remains standing long after the applause has faded.